Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2023 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster base plate kit with removable arms. Before we get into that though, let's just take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. So this is what your base plate can look like on the front of your Equinox whenever you're not hooked up to your motorhome and flat towing, which I think is important. You know, you're not always going to be flat towing, or the chances of that happening aren't extremely high in most cases, but the way it looks, you know, I don't really think it can get a whole lot better, to be honest with you. For the most part, everything blends in. You don't have to cut up, you know, your fascia a ton, just a couple small little cuts for everything to pass through, and it turned out really good. They give you, you know, brackets that are already attached to the base plate, so that makes your you know, hooking up your wiring connector and your breakaway switch really straightforward. Don't have to kind of fabricate anything, if you will. And to compare this to some of the other base plates, not a ton of differences. I actually just did a Blue Ox one on an Equinox a couple weeks ago, and that one looked really good too. But more importantly, everything's easy to get to and easy to use. Whenever you are ready to hook up, really straightforward, and that's partly due to the fact that the base plate uses these removable arms. So when you're ready to go, you take the arms, put them into the base plate, rotate it about a quarter turn, it'll lock into place, and that will allow us to, or give us a connection rather, to allow us to hook our tow bar up to it. With the ends being a direct connect style, all you're gonna have to do is take your tow bar end, line it up, put the pin through, and that's really about it. You know, obviously hook up your electrical and whatnot. So really straightforward. It's easy on your back. You know, you're not fighting it a whole lot. And the safety chain openings, that's one thing I did notice. They're tucked back here a little bit. So depending on the style of, you know, hook you got there, it might have to change it. These are probably about as big as I would go, but you know, still get the job done. With that said, this is going to work with most Roadmaster tow bars and even other manufacturers. There's a lot of adapter ends available now. So let's say, for example, if you already have a Blue Ox tow bar that you like, but you want this base plate, chances are really good there's an end available that you can just swap out and allow you to pair up that tow bar with this base plate. And I figured it'd be useful just to kind of refresh ourselves on the main parts that we're going to need to flat tow our Equinox down the road in the first place. First main component will be your base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up. Tow bar is going to be the second component, and that's going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your Chevy to the back of your motorhome. Third main part will be safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. We're going to keep everything hooked up to each other. The fourth main part will be your tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your coach to the back of your Equinox, keeping you safe and legal. And the fifth main component will be a supplemental braking system, and what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Chevy whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, bringing you to a more controlled and predictable stop. And then there's one other component I like to recommend, which is a battery charge line kit. And what that'll do is kind of trickle charge or maintain the battery in your Equinox whenever you're flat towing it down the road, because a lot of these braking systems will use the Chevy's battery power to operate, and so by using a charge line, it'll keep the battery in tip top and allow everything to function properly. Other than that, at the end of the day, base plate you really can't go wrong with. You know, I wouldn't hesitate to put it on my own Equinox if I was planning on flat towing it. So yeah, you know, as far as the installation is concerned, not the most difficult one I've ever done, nor the easiest. I'd say it falls somewhere in the middle. You will have to remove the fascia, but that's pretty much with any base plate you're going to put on. And as long as you take your time, you know, you should be in pretty good shape, but hopefully we can help you out. So why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Equinox, and we're going to have to remove the front fascia. So go ahead and pop your hood, and we're going to have 6 fasteners along this front edge that we need to remove. Here's what them fasteners look like. You can use a T15 Torx bit to get them all removed. If you move to kind of the edge of your headlight here, up top in this corner, there's going to be a 7mm head screw that we can pull out. And I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we'll also do it to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. If you move to your wheel wells, there's going to be 5 T15 Torx bit screws we'll pull out. It does help if you turn your wheels all the way in or out. Just gives you a little more room to work. But we'll run up here and get all these out. Underneath the vehicle now, we're going to have this little air dam that kind of drops down. And on the back side of it, there's going to be 4 7mm head screws. We'll go ahead and get all of them out. This will drop down and we can set it off to the side. We can remove this underbody panel now. So you're going to have 1 fastener in the middle. That's a 7mm head as well as the others. But there's going to be 8 on each side of the vehicle. These are kind of just scattered along. So get all these removed. I already have the 8 on the other side out. And so once I get all these pulled out, in theory, we should be able to take this and work it out from under the vehicle. Moving back to your wheel well liners now, you can grab the liner and just kind of peel it back. And then up in the corner where our fascia meets the quarter panel, might be a little tricky to see, but right there in that corner, there's going to be a 7mm head screw, and you need to pull that out. What I've done now is took some blue painter's tape and just placed it all along the areas where we're going to be working. That way we don't accidentally scratch anything up. But with that said, there's this chrome piece that runs kind of through the center of our headlight, and we're going to have to unsnap that. If you lift up on the corner of your grill, that'll kind of start to loosen it up. And what I've done too, you can spray some a little bit of soapy water in there. It just helps to kind of lubricate things. But starting from here and working out, you can take some plastic trim tools and be really careful when you're doing this. Kind of start to pry up on it and just work your way down, because you don't want to break this. It's a part of the fascia. You know, it's not a separate little part that you can just replace. So be deliberate and, you know, start to just kind of pry on it. And usually when you get, you know, a couple of these to kind of unsnap, the rest of it comes pretty easily. I'm just trying to work my way down here. So we have this released, and back here I'll give you a look at the fasteners. Here's a look at the fasteners that we're actually holding this in, and so that's what I was doing with the trim tool, just kind of working in behind there to get them to release. Now with an extra set of hands, we can actually get the fascia removed. So what you can do is just kind of start to work it, and then in the corner you can start. This just has some clips in there. So carefully just pop it out. You can spray soapy water in there. Sometimes you can trim tool it too. But once you get each side kind of like that, we can drop this down. And looks like on the passenger side, we're gonna have some connectors we need to unplug. There's 2 connectors. This one here, you can push down on that red tab and then push down on the center of it. to disconnect it. And then there's a push pin holding it to the body of our vehicle. You kind of just pry that out like that. And then there's also this style of connector as well, which push down on the tab and pull it out. But with this release now, we can go ahead and set our fascia off to the side. If you go to your headlights now, there's going to be a wire that comes. It has a push pin fastener kind of holding the wiring up. And we're going to remove that now. It's just easier because the headlights are going to need to come out. So just a trim tool, and you can pop that right out. To get the headlight out, there's two more fasteners. You'll have a 7mm head screw right here. Pull that out. And then there will be one kind of buried in this location here. The other one is, like I said, kind of tucked back up in here. So using an extension, we're able to get in there and get that screw out. Go ahead and kind of lift up on our headlight. You can pull it out, and we're going to unplug it. This essentially works the same as the other connectors that we undid already. Just pull back on the red tab, push down. That will release the light, set it off to the side. Get our washer fluid reservoir removed now. So there's a couple electrical connections that will disconnect. Down on the red tab, push on the center. This one is a little different. I just take a pick or small screwdriver, kind of come in behind it. You can kind of push up on the tab in there to release it. There's going to be a total of, I believe, 4 fasteners. We'll have one here and one there. We'll start by pulling them out. It's a 10mm socket that I'm using. The very bottom of the tank, you're going to have another 10mm. In the engine compartment, before we pull that last bolt out, there's the fluid lines. One there and one there. We'll disconnect those so you can squeeze on the sides of it. Just by pushing in on the sides, and that will release it there. So got that one, and then this one here, do the same thing. And then to prevent it from leaking, what you can do, so here's the 2 ends that we undid. You can actually just plug them in together for now, and that'll prevent all the fluid from rushing out of there. That final bolt will be a 10mm right here. And so once we get this thing removed, we should be able to pull the tank off from the vehicle. Last bolt now removed. We can grab our washer reservoir there and set it off to the side. We're going to have this ambient air temperature sensor, and we're just going to get it out of the way. What you can do with these, if you rotate it about a quarter turn, these little plastic tabs kind of start to compress there, and you can kind of push in on them and that'll pop out, and chances are pretty good we'll have to get the wiring out of the way too. So I'm just going to release those tabs from this little air dam here. Over here on just the passenger side, kind of tricky to see, but on our frame rail on the top of it, there's going to be a 10mm head nut in there, right where my socket is. And that's a ground. What you're going to do is loosen that up, and then I'm going to pull and kind of shift our ground wire this way, and then tighten the nut back down to give us more space. So I'll go ahead and do that and then show you what it looks like once I'm done. So I got that done, and this is what it looks like. Really nothing to it. Like I said, loosen it and push that wire out of the way to give us some clearance and tighten it back down. What we're able to do now is start to get our side plates on for our base plate. So we're going to remove this factory bolt here in our subframe, and just to give it some extra support, I put this jack underneath there. like I said, just give it some support. So this bolt will pull out using a 21mm socket. But the way this is going to work, it's going to sit up like this. All right, and then you can take that factory bolt and put on some red Loctite. And all the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate is going to receive some of this Loctite. You can grab a tube of it here at eTrailer. We'll hold that up into position and get the bolt started, and we're going to run it down pretty much completely, but leave it hand tight. Grab the long bolt, put on your red Loctite, and put on a flat washer. This is going to run up through like that. And you put on one of those spacer blocks there. And then another flat washer goes on top of it. Then you'll have these wedges, all right? And one side of the wedge is flat, the other side's angled. On this one, you want the angled or ramp side to face up like that. And we're gonna work everything through and push it up through the factory hole there in the frame. Here's where the bolt passes up through the top of our frame rail. All right, and then you can take another one of these wedges. On this side, you want the angled or ramp side to face down, like that. And from there, you can put on another flat washer, and then a split lock washer, and a nut. With that hardware in place, 21mm socket, we'll snug up this factory bolt first. And then we can come back with a 3/4 inch socket and wrench and snug up this one. And now you can come back with a torque wrench and tighten down this hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. We can do some drilling now. So there's going to be 3 holes in the base plate, this one, and this one that we're going to drill through. You know, it doesn't hurt to drill up just a little bit, make sure we get a good bite on that metal, and be careful because behind here, you know, if your drill bit runs through real fast, you could potentially hit some stuff going on back here. So just be mindful of that. But I got my 3/8 bit. I'm gonna get those drilled out. Kind of a quick trick that you can use too if you're worried about punching through. If you take a block of wood or something and kind of put it up behind there, if the bit does want to grab and kind of pull you through, you know, all that stuff will be protected. You'll just hit the block of wood. So just a pointer there if you'd rather be safe than sorry. Once you have them holes drilled, you can take these bolts, put on your Loctite, and just push them through all 3 of the openings. And then we can come in on the other side and get the rest of the hardware done. Here's where one of them comes through, and all 3 of them are going to take the same style of hardware, but put on a split lock washer and the nut. We'll get all of them started hand tight. Once it's all in place and hand tight, take a 9/16 socket and wrench and snug them down. And of course, once they're snug, can change over to a torque wrench and tighten them down to the amount specified in your instructions. Trim some of this air dam to make room for our base plate. So on the driver's side, we have this little tab that comes out where our air temp sensor was connected. I'm gonna cut that off, and I'm gonna hold on to this too. I might end up reusing it if we can mount it up in a different spot maybe. So we'll see how that goes a little later on, but then we can cut this portion out as well. And this is somewhat thick plastic. I'm using a pair of 10 snips. I'm sure you could use a regular pair of snips or a Dremel tool or whatever you got around the house, it'll work. With an extra set of hands, we can take the center portion of our base plate, and the holes in it are going to line up with the holes there in the side plates. And what you can do is take one of these bolts, put on a flat washer and your red Loctite, push it through. Then where the bolt comes out on the other side, you can put on a split lock washer and a nut. And you should be able to get one of them started hand tight. That'll probably be good to kind of hold the base plate up while we work on the rest of the hardware. Once all of them are in place and hand tight, 3/4 inch socket and wrench, we'll snug all these up. And just like the other hardware, you need to make sure to come back with a torque wrench and tighten it down to the amount specified. The ambient air temperature sensor, I didn't end up using that piece that we saved, but what I did, I just ran it through this square tube there in our base plate, faced it towards the direction of travel, and just used a zip tie to secure it down. So I went ahead and simply reinstalled our washer fluid bottle and our headlights the opposite way that I removed them. Nothing special about them there. And at this point, it'd be a great time to work on any of your other flat towing components like wiring or braking system, things like that, because with the fascia off, you just have a lot more room to work, run wires. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And once I'm done, we'll come back and go over how to trim the fascia to get it reinstalled. So we'll get that knocked out and touch base once that's done. So I got all of our other components installed, our wiring and our braking system and whatnot. And at this point, we can get the fascia back on. So what I've done is just loosely put this up into position, right? And that's going to let us know where we need to trim. And we can kind of trim a little, see if it'll fit better, so on and so on. Because you can always remove more material, really difficult to put it back. So honestly, it looks like we might just have to trim out some small openings here where our sockets are, and potentially a little upright piece in the middle for our wiring to clear. So I'm gonna do one side, see how it turns out and get a better idea, and then we'll do the other side together. So I got our one side cut, and it looks like this potentially is all we're gonna need to do. Just trim out this little area here. So you can use a bunch of different tools. I found something like this usually cuts it a little cleaner, but the choice is yours, whatever you got. So I'm just going to get it as close as I can, essentially, to the base plate and cut all of it out, and try to push it on further, push the fascia on further. And if it all clears, great. If not, we'll keep removing a little material. So I was able to cut that out, and once you did both sides, fascia pushed all the way on. Feels really good. Plug in your electrical connectors, because now that it fits, we're gonna bolt it all back up, right? And I did have to, there's a little middle upright piece in there I had to trim out for our wiring to clear. And then these I kind of had to bend a little bit and manipulate just to get everything to fit how I wanted to. If you need to do that, I have a 10mm deep ball socket and extension. Kind of slide it over and give you enough leverage to do that. So now that everything is more or less complete here, I'll go ahead and reinstall our fascia the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster base plate kit with removable arms on our 2023 Chevrolet Equinox.